This is Kal Kat's the Kal Kat story. This is a new season. Well, the beginning of it, pilot. Starship, Lake Ocean's Legacy. The Illiop had Mad Planet. Kal Kat marks cards premise by the C3 Rec team, and of course Silly Trek. Of course, Kal Kat marks cards was Silly Trek. Right? So, yeah. So basically, we're going to attempt to do the Silly Trek adventure, the very first ever Silly Trek, as a modern 90-minute pilot for another series. Because yeah, if you're gonna do a silly and origin story, yeah, do that. This is the first of that. So yeah, what that is basically is the Silly Trek was Starship Locations. Silly Trek was our role-playing game in college, in high school, I should say, and then in college, in high school, 38 years ago on the set of the original, before the Next Generation even started, yeah, it would have been 1986, right after Star Trek 4, basically. Yeah, so Next Generation started a year later in October '87. So yeah, we had a lot of ideas, concepts, and things going on then. Mostly odd stuff. Yeah, we had in the Silly Trek Adventures movie, the Enterprise A fights a giant Teddy Ruxpin robot that attacks them, and they blow it up. And then subsequent rewrites of that story have a bunch of other stuff going on that's 80s pop culture references, basically the genesis of Silly Trek. There were a couple of teachers at school that were spoofed in the story, because sure, why not? And some of them were included because we liked them. And this story's no exception. We changed the names a little bit. But yeah, they show up. So we've met Sam Clark, who was like Steve Clark. Now we're going to meet Roger Johnson, who was Roger Math in this version. And we're going to meet Dawn Schneid, who's now Snell, as the Borg Queen, because we were the Borg before the Borg. Borg before the Borg. It's possible. You can look back at the 1986 16th birthday stuff footage on location. See, there's already a genesis of that in there. They were called the Bored. A little different, but they were bored teenagers, basically. And, of course, also equally emotively horny. Yeah, that was odd about Inside Out 2, or about emotion not being horny. That would be in there. But anyway, so basically, some of the early group paired off with some of the other one in the early days, because they would, and we were immature, and we were like, they've got the Zeldanian Nintendosis, which came a little later. That did come a little later. That was 87, 88. But they've got but there was a version of that earlier. So yeah, that was later. But it was the genesis of that whole idea of, is it a simulation? The bored. If they were bored, then they were horny. Then it didn't make sense. It wasn't supposed to. So how do you rewrite a story like that to make this kind of make sense? Well, I went and reviewed the classic Trek episodes where they've gone to paradise planets and things have affected the crew, and then some Next Generation ones. Not so much with those. Not so much with Raisa and stuff like that. In the later ones, it was more like that was more mature at that point. Deep Space Nine, TNG, and Deep Space Nine were a little more on point. Yeah. So yeah, even though Maurice Hurley thought of the Borg later, he was thinking of kind of the same idea. He was thinking of these cybernetic Terminator guys that are just a collective, like ants, robot ant things. Of course, they didn't look like ants; they looked like people. That was later, though. Earlier, the Borg were simply this group of people that were bored of playing the Silly Trek game. including a couple of the teachers. And they didn't want it. They didn't want the whimsy and the imagination of the game. They didn't get it. In other words, they didn't get it, man. They didn't reach. And so they became the Borg. That's where the Borg comes from. And they reveal in the story that they were the ones that went to the Star Trek people and said, in the story they appear and they say, we were the ones who went to Star Trek and told Horley and Gene Roddenberry and all that about that. So they invented they didn't get it, so they reinvented them as the Borg. At least that's the story. Anyway, it is a parody. That was later. They do acknowledge that. They also acknowledge that the Starbase 185 thing and the J25 thing that leads to the Borg in the Q, taking them to meet the Borg 7,000 light years away in the Delta Quadrant, they kind of messed up in the timeline in Next Generation, because that was supposed to be Argelius, and that planet was known in the original Star Trek. It was the Wolf in the Fold planet. So let's go to Argelius for the pilot. Let's do that. Let's have them say that because these creatures here, Argelius. Let's have them do that. Let's go to Argelius. That'd be cool. Let's explain that station thing, but explain it away. Like, oh, they just messed up. It was a typo. But it created a paradox because they're Cillians. Well, it's just Cillian space. Yeah, if you have a convoluted story where something goofy's happening, like a giant 500-meter Teddy Ruxpin fighting the ship, then you just go with it and say, like, oh, it must have been left over from Funland or something. Okay. And then have some of them mention Five Nights at Freddy's, of course. But that came later. Five Nights at Freddy's, which is the current thing, it's a found footage trap game kind of thing. And now it's movies. Several. They did parody movies before they did the actual movie. I didn't see the actual movie. Saw one of the parody movies. It was the one with Nicolas Cage in it. That wasn't very good. I saw one of them. Yeah. But yeah, they're and he was taking it off on the original OG stuff. He was like, oh, it's Chuck E. Cheese. Because that's what it was. So Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese bought each other. Showbiz Pizza merged with Chuck E. Cheese. They were a pizza place in the 80s, very popular in the 80s. There was Chuck E. Cheese everywhere. I think there is still currently one in San Jose, but it took over the KB Toy Store. But yeah, the idea of animatronics, like Country Bear Jamboree over at Disney or something, Imaginarium thing, or Chuck E. Cheese animatronics, coming to life and taking over and going after the kids and eating them, yeah, that was prevalent in the 80s. Everybody in the X generation that went to a Chuck E. Cheese when they were a kid was like, yeah, that would totally happen, and that was a story. Mark's Cards had written one about Disneyland characters being all retrofitted to kill, and I wrote one about Chuck E. Cheese kill. And also this weird little story about what would happen if the Enterprise fought Teddy Ruxpin, because that'd be funny. And caused black holes and planets to blow up and stuff. Because he would. Because he's actually a space demigod, apparently, or something. Well, in this version, he's not. In this version, I retconned that a little bit and made him controlled by a space demigod from the classic Trek, Charlie X, who's in the story. And that makes more sense. Like, okay, he's controlling the bear thing. He's activated like a spaceship, basically. They treat it as a giant spaceship. Now, Funland is a spoof of Disneyland, clearly, but it's also a spoof of Chuck E. Cheese. It would be like if in the 80s, they did Disneyland and Chuck E. Cheese got together. And then Hasbro decided to fund it. And they made up this other version of where the animatronics were alive and walking around and stuff, Imaginarium style. And then they went crazy and tried to kill everybody. And so they were banished off the Earth in the time of Starship Columbia, which was the chimera equivalent of Starship Enterprise from it was kind of Columbia Enterprise. It was supposed to be Enterprise. It had Jonathan Archer and stuff. But it was called something else. Dave Leatherbelt, I think. In the Cillian version in the 2000s. But if you go back earlier, because you have to go back earlier, Funland was conjured by the Cillians, who wanted their own version of Disneyland that was more frightening. That's all. So it was clearly 2000s, early 2000s. So it was before Five Nights at Freddy's, but probably they were inspired because they probably saw the college version of the role-playing game online and they were like, oh, that's cool. Or they were inspired by something very similar. Chuck E. Cheese. Animatronics at Chuck E. Cheese. And Jurassic Park. Because why not combine them? Why not have a dinosaur? Why not have, like a, because T-Rex, happy T-Rex eating the kids is Barney basically, but evil. So yeah. But yeah, so that doesn't happen in this story though. There's no animatronics eating anybody. Strangely enough, there isn't. That's not in there. Partly because how would we film that? And also because they would say, oh, it's like Five Nights at Freddy's. And it's not. It predates it by at least 5, 6 years, 10 years even. And if you go back to the original story, Mark's Cards in Disneyland, Death Comes to Disneyland, it goes back to 1990 something. So that's way back. Death Comes to Disneyland. But yes, where somebody rigged up a Donald Duck to have teeth so it could chew people up. Yeah. Why didn't they just rig up Goofy to do that? I don't know. He didn't think of that. I thought it would be funnier if it was a duck. Because ducks don't have teeth. It would be funny if they just had teeth. Unless it's a prehistoric duck. Hilarious. But yes, another thing, so that all predates that. And it's kind of similar to more like stuff. Maybe the Cillian Funland version, maybe they went back in, maybe a Q of sorts is messing with the space-time continuum and made Funland be evil. It's possible one of the Cillians did that. So Funland was banished from Earth in around the time of the Third World War in Star Trek. And sent off into space, probably 2050. Now it's 2024, so yeah, about 25 years from now. And they were banished into space, like the Khan people. And the joke was that Freddy Ruxpin was one of the animatronics, becomes like Khan. And then in part 2, he shows up and he fights they fight a animatronic Teddy Ruxpin and an animatronic Living Pamela as the Wrath of Khan, basically. She, Living Pamela is another doll, and she plays Joaquin from the story. So, we can't do that because we've already kind of done that with the Sarah Estimon stuff. We've done Wrath of Khan quite a lot. We've done Wrath of Khan type stories quite a lot. So they're just like regular Star Trek has. We don't need to do that. Here, this story is mostly a thinking episode, bottle show, dealing with this Charlie X character who's flipping out. Mainly dealing with Roger Math and his illegitimate son from an alien that apparently he got with. Because he's a Cillian. Because he has Cillian powers as an adult, which makes him a different kind of Cillian. And the other in Schnell shows up at the end. So yeah, you basically have, and she helps the crew. Also, it is a nod to Star Trek Discovery. We're probably doing the Discovery one. They made 2 Playmates figures. They made a Michael Burnham and a Saru. So they appear in the story, and we sort of retcon a version of the ending of that series, which just ended, by implying that when she went into the space artifact, the progenitor artifact, she never actually came out, and she and Mull are still in there. And the artifact is kicked into the wormhole only because the other version of her kicked it into the wormhole, and that it went back through time, back to our current time period of 2407 in the story. Even though I know it's 2401 technically, or 2402. In this story, it's 5 years later, just to kick it a little bit ahead, just to, because we didn't want to actually show Starfleet Academy. That would have been lame. So we didn't want to do that even here. But they're acting like Academy people. So they're just a little bit later than the Academy, because that's just lower decks. They're basically lower decks now. So we're doing lower decks. Lower Decks is ending this season, but also Prodigy is doing a final season on a second and final season on Netflix in a few days. I don't know if we can finish all of this in 7 days, 8 days. If we can, then that would be cool, because then we can it'll be out for Pride Month or whatnot. But yes, it does have a shocking finale. it is a rewrite of that story. It's a sequel follow-up to Charlie X, which it's already been done in one of the Star Trek New Worlds things. Already did something like that. This is not really like that. So basically, when Next Generation started, go back to Next Generation of the board, we had several, because we're Pine Hill students, because we're learning disabilities, right? And the school, and we thought that cooties, because, yeah, immature. Okay, cooties, and also it was the 80s, so everybody was afraid of AIDS. So all the ones that are hooking up in the story, they're going to be like, they're going to get the cooties, and it's going to infect everybody, and they're all going to get the cooties. That's the genesis of the Zeldanian Nintendosis from last season. A made-up virus that's linked to the Zeldanian Nintendos of the space virus. Also highlights their ambition and stuff like that. Kind of like the Wrath Planet, the same thing in the Transtech. Highlights their ambition or whatnot. But makes them eventually go crazy. The Cillian thing is the same version. They come down with something similar. The spores of that other planet, the spores of this planet where Spock got infected, apparently are being used on Orgelius, on the life forms there. Even though it's a different planet, which is why they're not prepared for it. That's why. We don't see the planet, but we get to see the results. They're going crazy. Basically, Charlie X is manipulating them. Turns out it could be nanobots or something in this story. And we were kind of doing that with those other ones too. That's kind of what we were getting at. We weren't obsessed with germs. It's just that we wanted to have, we wanted to explain why people were just horny and bored and had emotions, like teen emotions, which is totally normal. But we didn't get that at the time. So, and didn't want to play our game. Why not? They would get sent into the Cillian realm, and we established a weird canon of the Cillian realm story, the Cilli Trek, in that if you left it, you would fry part of your universe or freeze it or something. It would be wrecked in some way. They have to go back and fix it. And if you had Cillian powers, your thoughts create reality, similar to the early Jung Swan. Was a little later, but they kind of were copying stuff from the 80s when they thought of that too by other people, so it wasn't really them originally. The thoughts create reality. That's like any kind of fantasy movie from the 80s, really. I mean, Never-Ending Story is referenced in here, that kind of thing. The thoughts rebuild Fantasia, that kind of thing. Destroy or rebuild Fantasia. I'm sure we were thinking of that. And Star Trek was too, when they came up with characters similar to that. So we're on the same wavelength, but the apple tossing scene, that is weird. That literally happened on Star Trek a week later. The only way that could possibly have worked is, these guys from the teachers were aware of what we were doing and gave them that information. It's the only way that works. Well, yes, it can't be proven, but they must have. And the similarities between this Zelenian thing and, say, the episode "The Naked Now" with the space virus, which they were copying classic Trek in that episode, Next Generation, early on, second or third episode, second, I think. Code of Honor was terrible, but "The Naked Now," they were all horny. Oh, the shocking, they're horny. They went to a horny planet, Justice planet, as well. So they were very horny on the Next Generation, because they could get away with it. And they didn't introduce the Borg, really, until season 2, I believe. And so, but they knew about something like it. At the end of the Neutral Zone, they were kind of implying things were going on. And the virus episode with unnatural selection. And Q-Who and unnatural selection, the space virus and the aging virus and all that. That was a Cillian thing. So they were thinking along the same lines as us. It was crazy. They're right along the same line. Oh, that's zombies and stuff. But we were kids and we had no agents. Later on, there was that writing contest when we were in college. Did that, but and that seeped into Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So there you go. So yeah, the Argelius thing, it's a 3 or 4 different planets. I think they just chose the name over and over again. I think that's what happened. They sounded science fiction-y. It's the Iota Leonis. They thought it sounded science fiction, so we're going to use that. Um, let's say Omicron Ceti is the one with the spores. And sometimes it's spelled with an S, Ceti. So it's not Cetus, it's some other constellation. And some other solar system. Yeah, Star Trek and the original Star Trek were infamous for grabbing hold of stuff that was, grabbing hold of stars that they knew about in space and just picking them randomly, like Deneb and Rigel, just using them. And even the Star Trek memory alpha thing is a little off on some of that because there's so many Rigels and Denebs. And this one, they point out that this one, Argelius, they got it wrong in Next Generation. When they went to Station 185, they should have been at the edge of Federation space at that point, and they weren't. So they screwed that up. They mentioned that it's an error. It shouldn't have been Argelius. And they just didn't fix it. Well, there's another error they didn't fix either. There's Rigel 10 from Enterprise, Star Trek Enterprise, Captain Archer. That is not in orbit of Rigel because Enterprise takes place in an earlier era than Kirk, like 100 years earlier, before they got out that far. It can't be. It's got to be Rigel Kentaurus. It's got to be a planet in orbit of Proxima. So that's right nearby, 4 light years off. And from the story standpoint, it's Proxima. It's in the Proxima system. That's all. So there it is. So they should change that because it's Proxima. It's meant to be. We were there for Enterprise. We couldn't save it. Sorry. The Xindi thing, that was stupid. They shouldn't have done that. I'm telling you, no, Romulan War. You need to do the Romulan War. You need to start that. But they're all like, no, we can't show them on the view screen because Kirk said they couldn't be on the view screen. You did need to do the Romulan War. It's before the forming of the Federation. Do the Romulan War. No, it's too hard. But yeah. So in 4th season they were trying to do the Romulan War. Kind of. Sort of. Then they over-explained the Klingon makeup thing. Whereas my explanation in this for the Klingon makeup from Discovery was either poor makeup or just they weren't thinking. They weren't thinking. What were they thinking? They looked more like the Herc. Yes. I made them sound cooler that way by saying they were the enemies of the Klingon, the Herc. Yeah. This has some STO nods too as well. This is fun. Because apparently they did do an STO story a long time ago with Denise Crosby as a Borg and Sela as a Borg, and we kind of did something similar. So yeah. Isn't that we were ripping off FTO? We didn't know about that until just recently. Watched that old, somebody made a playthrough, and I was like, oh, they did that already. A couple years ago. Wow, we really did not know about that. Sela's not in this one. But it is, the Schnellest character is going to be played by, because that makes sense. She's blonde. Borg would be blonde. So that makes sense. Or maybe I'll make it one of the other characters. Engender returns in season 2 as the nurse. The Locarnos are not in it. Mahoney's not in it. It's all the younger crew on their space mission, but they're led by somebody who the Lower Decks fans will definitely reach with because it's funny, and I'll give it away. Beckett Mariner is going to lead the story. When she seemed really crazy. It's not actually the actress. It's going to be us, but it's a homage to Lower Decks, which is going to be in its final season later in the year. Yeah, a little later. But very soon we're going to have Prodigy season 2, and I will binge and review all the episodes on Netflix, and then I'll review them. Yeah. So. on the Voyager B, the Curie class Voyager B. Yeah. Ooh. And there's already a Cillian in that teaser trailer. So that's funny. Why did they realize that? I like how our characters show up in the other stories. And actually, the ship fighting the Teddy Ruxpin is not completely unheard of. It's happened before. We had some of our guidebook stuff up there. When we posted our early Cillian game stuff, there was a version of it online of the game. You could play it in the 2000s, and apparently it leaked into the lexicon of lost episodes of Next Generation that there was an episode where they fought a giant teddy bear in space, and it was an Illiop adventure or something like that. It was Teddy Ruxpin, so that got into the lexicon. So somebody put that there other than us before we put it up there. But no, that was never a Next Generation episode. It was rewritten as one in the Cillian Realms books. Yes, it's in there. In that case, we had Enterprise A made the Enterprise D just because we could. But that was partly because of Mark's Cards, who was like, he didn't know that Next Generation took place 78 years after the original Star Trek, so he just assumed they would meet up. He didn't know they'd meet up. Yeah. It was a junior high and a high school. He was in junior high and I was in high school, so he didn't know. Nobody, and I didn't correct him. But yeah, it was funny. So yeah, the board. Yes, there were the zombie thing. Everybody comes up with zombies, though. I mean, the genesis of it's not that someone stole an idea. It's that zombies and mysterious plague viruses and possession aliens and that kind of stuff. All sci-fi tropes, anyways. We just thought of it too. Really, if you think about it that way, we just thought of it too. It'd be kind of cool if there's these Terminator Borg. In fact, by introducing a Borg Queen, they kind of made it less interesting by having there be a central leader somewhere in Star Trek. I know we addressed that in the story. When Schnellitus shows up, she goes, "I was the Borg Queen before the Borg Queen. I was the Borg Queen in 1988. They're the Borg Queen. She was the Borg Queen in 1996. A little bit later. So she predates her by like 8 years. So, so she's the one that the Borg Queen sent out. So she's probably actually the one that encountered Picard in Best of Both Worlds, not the other lady. See, that actually makes Best of Both Worlds work, because, okay, the Borg Queen can download herself. I figured the Borg Queen idea, the Borg King idea, is that Borg King Wesley, of course. The Borg Queen idea is that, and they thought of that too. The Wessian was the Borg King. Star Trek Online did that. It's the parallel universe where there's a Borg King, it's Wesley. In the other universe, and there's trying to get V'ger, because of course, yeah, very silly trick. Yeah. So yeah, the Queen idea is, I always thought of like, okay, that maybe every large cube has one, which would also explain the Voyager one that kind of looked different until the finale, and it was Alex Creed again. But and the Picard one, where it was a Borg Queen from another universe, was the late that actress Annie Warching, who was given an honorific silly Trek send-off in her story, one of her stories, where the Borg Jennifer Piedmont shows up and goes, "I'm going to take you where no one dared go before, where you'll live forever in this timeline thing." Takes her to go in the Borg thing. Also, yeah, the Discovery finale having that weird progenitor thing, which goes back to our time period, by the way. Progenitor thing. But yeah, and Tam being a mistake. There's yeah. So we have the progenitor thing. We've got in the progenitor realm, and I mentioned this to Larry Nemechek's website. He's the Star Trek companion guy. He's the guru of Star Trek, not me. That guy. Yeah, I mentioned to him, like, I bet the progenitor lady, because they were putting Discovery together back when Nichelle Nichols was still alive, because they were writing the final season, which became the final season. They had to go back and rewrite it. I bet they meant for the progenitor lady, because the lady that got looks a lot like Nichelle Nichols. I bet they meant to get Nichelle Nichols to come in and play the progenitor lady. And they couldn't because she passed away, so they couldn't get her. But I bet that's who they meant to be that, because that would have been cool. Like a classic Trek lady used to show up and go like, yes, you have found the nature of existence. Ah, that would have been great. They didn't. She died. But yes, we paid homage to her at Starship Locations, pilot with the Turbo Planet. And we continue to pay homage to her because Wilson Uhura is her niece in the story. But yes, and Wilson Uhura gets to go visit the progenitor ship. So it's implied in the story that that's actually the progenitor lady Burnham later encounters. It's just Wilson went into the machine and put herself in there. It's not even a progenitor, it's just Wilson. But it looks a little like Uhura. But yeah, it's implied that that's what happened in the story. So. She is still alive. She's still alive. Somehow regenerated in the force field of the thing. But yeah, there's some other quirks in there. There's they messed up when they tried to figure out Tamara, Tam, Tal, Javar Tal to Tamtal to then a jump of over 400 years, 500 years to the 3190s when we come up with Grey Tal and the others who are clearly like the sixth and seventh host of Tal. So why between host number 3 and 6 are there like 400 years? Well, they didn't add right. They screwed up. So this story kind of rectifies that a little bit. Tam is going to leave the show in this pilot. Gonna get away. She's going to leave the show but hundreds of years in the future she'll be back as Grey. Well, as the person before Grey, whoever that is. We don't know who the person before Grey is. So the person before Grey, yeah, she'll be back. Whoever that is. Don't worry about it. Probably won't address it. We didn't want to do a completely Discovery story, though. We wanted to do a Charlie X fights Roger Johnson episode. And because there's another Johnson that was on them. Right? Not the writing team, but the inspiration for the story. And there was a Abby Woodworth, also an inspiration for the story. And another Steve, not Uchimini, it's another guy, yeah. And then there's another, it gets into Uchimini, but no, that's another guy. I should know the guy's name. And then there's another guy, Stephen Riley as well. Riley. Who was in the inspiration for the story during sports camp. These other adult guys. And mainly it's Woodworth. It's Abby Woodworth, who was the inspiration for Kestra, is in the story. and she's like, so I want to change some of this around because it made it less cringe. Make it make more sense. That didn't actually happen. We didn't talk about the story specifically, but other things kind of related to that. So I thought that it would be kind of fun to go there. Just like a little bit of the other Jessica Woodworth, her mother, in there too. Yeah. So there's a little bit of parody of the sports camp stuff in there as script fodder. You won't notice it though. It'll seem very much like okay, the alien spores are affecting them, and that's what's making them do that. Like odd, and that's fine. So that's not actually what they're really thinking. But yeah, she was inspiration. Yeah, and so we have a version of her appears as well as a version of Hertzman. The people that Tam and Kester were based on appear in the story. In other words, as their Cillian counterparts. They're just there. They're other young officers in the story. So that's kind of fun. That the emoji shows up. Emoji. The two Abby show up. The Hertzman one included. They all show up, and they're in the story. Not as Woodworth, of course. No, that's not what's happening. It's just she inspired the story. Yeah, she didn't write it. She inspired it. But yeah, so okay, if these are our characters that are based on, then here's what we have to change to make it less that, but more fun. And, the Sylvia Tilly character appears to be inspired by emoji over there on Discovery as well. And also, Stephen Curry. But I don't think they know either of them. I think it just occurred to them because, yeah, Sylvia Tilly does sound like Silly Kelly. But little do they know that Silly Kelly is just is just a version of me, not a girl. But yeah, but yes. So we have a lot of these, yeah, inspirations for this season in here, and that's the way stories usually happen. Is, you know, inspiration for something, and the character of Kestra broke up with Tej at the beginning of the story. And then they have a spat, which is funny. There's a lot of good jokes in this, but yeah, it's a silly track comedy parody. So if we're going to put it together, it's already getting warm though, so it's yeah. So let's see what the this is a making of, and yeah, we're gonna do that. Oh yeah, I didn't explain what a Teddy Ruxpin. Oh, there's another thing there. Yeah. Okay, so the Seth MacFarlane movie series Ted 1 and 2. He was on the same wavelength that we were in the Silly Track days, same age, roughly, same everything. Pretty much. I think he's a little older. Seth MacFarlane, the Family Guy guy, and he would totally be into like, oh, what I wanted to do, because he did, is he wanted to make Ted a Teddy Ruxpin movie, make Teddy Ruxpin cuss, because he was thinking our old radio stuff. Well, he probably didn't watch our old radio stuff, but he was probably thinking the same thing that we were thinking, because the Teddy Ruxpin was a I get the Teddy Ruxpin, but we'll see it later. But you could put a tape in it, and it would play the little adventures of the highly successful in '85 and '86 until the coming of Nintendo, and then the Nintendo game system kind of, yeah, the kids wanted to do that instead. Yeah, it's way more cool. So, but yes, they overestimated the construction of those. Her OG ones are either $90 or nothing, or $30. I have the $30 cheapy one. It's broken eye. It's all. Anyway, so yeah, the from before, from a convention, I found it at a flea market. And it has been featured in one of the first creepypasta of Silly Kelly, 2019 Bacon thing, where we had that Teddy Ruxpin in a trolley thing, and went around and I was dressed like the Mog from Star Wars, or from Spaceball, and it was hilarious. And I had a Teddy Ruxpin on it in a cart, running around like it was a baby. It was hilarious. I was trying to get on a viral video. I was really desperately trying to get on someone's video somewhere. Look at this guy. He's got a Teddy Ruxpin. What the hell is he doing? Oh. And I don't think I did end up in too many of them. Was it the guy with the Teddy Ruxpin and the guy dressed up in a funky suit, that Chewbacca Mog suit? That was me. Really desperately trying to, like, yeah, get more views, because the algorithm took away almost all of the subscribers on our channels, even though we've got thousands of views. Yeah, all the way to the subscribers. There are hardly any left. I don't know where they all went. They're just not there anymore. They left. I think also the Copra Act probably took out a lot of them too, because they were probably not old enough to be on there, but they subscribed to everybody because they could. I didn't know who they were. I don't know who any of the subscribers are. But yeah, so they took that away too. So yeah, algorithm. But yeah, so basically MacFarlane is like the Ted movies were, because when we were kids in the 80s, we thought, well, we could just put a Metallica tape in it. It was always a Metallica tape. It always seemed to be a Metallica tape, or AC/DC, but it was usually Metallica. In the Teddy Ruxpin, and it could play. And I believe one of my friends had one, and it didn't work. Yeah. Of course, one of the other friends figured out, like, okay, here's what you do. There's a little button inside the thing that makes it not play tapes that aren't part of the storybook, so it could move the mouth. So you just tape the little thing in there, and then it'll play anything. You can play like rock music on it, but the mouth wouldn't move. It would just go. And also they say if you owned a Teddy Ruxpin, you're psychotic. No, that's silly. Yeah, if you had one, no, of course not. But yes, oh, yeah, I don't know what, the premise of a talking animal bear, the toy is kind of cool. Nowadays they have a chip in their little memory chip thing version. It doesn't really look like it anymore. It's not as nightmare fuel. Yeah, it doesn't look right. It needs to be nightmare fuel. And it's the inspiration for the bear in Five Nights at Freddy's. Come on. But no, it was Teddy Ruxpin. It's a Teddy Ruxpin from the 80s. Come on, guys. It's a Teddy Ruxpin. But yes, yeah. How do we pull that off in the Silly Trek story? Well, that's yet to be seen. But if it's a spaceship that was built at Funland and then released into space, then sure, fine. It's a spaceship. Don't do that often. So is Johnson's airship the Cheshire Cat? Probably. That'd be funny. Because you figured it would be. And I keep saying Johnson, and that's his Roger Johnson. No relation to Kevin Johnson. Roger Johnson, and no relation. And they didn't discuss any of that. It's not, they didn't discuss it. They don't know. He was the Roger Mathis, a different guy. Just so you know, they did not, disclaimer, they didn't allegedly inspire the Silly Trek story. Roger Johnson, years ago, inspired the Silly Trek story. Wanted to make something that was so bizarre that even he would think it was cool. It didn't really work. He still didn't think it was cool. But yes, and thus the Borg were born. Because they weren't born. They were just bored. The Borg and the Borg. And it's a rewrite of that Star Trek, Silly Trek, the Borg graham cracker story that I found as well. In a sense. Yeah, kind of. A little more realistic. I mean, it's Silly Trek, but it's a little more, what's happening to them is still in a something's affecting them that's making them. It's the spores or the alien virus or Charlie or whatever is affecting how things are working in the story. And that's why they're acting silly. And that's why they get to fight the giant bear thing. So it's not that the ridiculousness of the fighting the giant bear thing, it's the ridiculousness of whatever's affecting their minds. Playing with them, toying with them, the collectible thing. Oh, and Kivas Fajo was mentioned as well. Guy from the Next Generation. He's mentioned. He's as dead. Apparently Charlie killed him. Not to be confused with the other Charlie from Has Been Hotel, who was mentioned a few times in the story. In the other stories. But not here. In the Phantom Ape story. That was a different character. It's a different Charlie. Probably inspired by him, though. Probably. And then there's that. And then there's Digital Circus, which is the clown lady. A Pine Hill student. It's kind of Chris. Pine Hill. So Libyan, the Elysian. It's an Elysian. She's in the realm. Yeah, Digital Circus. That works. She's an Elysian. She's a Cillian. She's trapped in the Cillian realm. Of a sorts. It's a holodeck, basically. An animatronic that comes to life again thing. We thought of that long before Freddy's. Long before that. It was all to say that Kal Kat guy can't be old enough to have been in that. I was born in 1970. Yeah, I can be. I was there. You young whippersnappers. So yeah. We'd get to the 80s. All that stuff. Yeah, you guys didn't invent that. We did. Spooky animatronics. Now that goes back to us. Because it was a weird idea. Chuck E. Cheese was a rat. He was supposed to be another character, but he was a rat. You could look up the history of Chuck E. Cheese, but apparently they wanted to get a weasel or something, and they sent them a rat costume instead. A rat selling pizzas. It's just a really weird idea. So naturally it just led to, okay, yeah. That Grimace ripoff, Mr. Munch, has clearly Grimace. So there was already McDonald's before that. Let's do it. Yeah, Birdie from McDonald's. Also, Five Nights at Freddy's is ripping off Birdie from McDonald's, which is way back to the 80s. Birdie from McDonald's. Yeah. Five Nights at Freddy's. I've played it. I did like the part where the guy jumps out and he's like, you totally don't expect it. Oh, that part was cool. The jump scare that actually worked. Usually they don't. Usually they have like a song in the background that lets you cue you in that it's gonna happen. Whereas that one kind of glitched and it pops out. You're like, what the hell? I think it just ate me. Dang it. Ah. Mmm. Of course I had to beat the game. I did. No, merely by waiting for the traps to come around and then hiding from them till the end of the game. You can pop out. You're like, oh, they're gone. Now, what they should have done for that one is they should have had something at the very end eat him anyway. Gets in the parking lot. He's gone. So anyway, Starship Locations Legacy. This is the making of. Yeah. And yeah, we're gonna do the Illiop adventure, an adaptation of the Illiop adventure. Wow, it's going back to OG season 1, game 1. I don't know how many of the other ones we could do because we've already done most of them. We'll see. I'm not sure if this is 3 90-minute movies that will eventually be made or another trilogy for this season, probably, since that's the easiest. Originally, it started out as like 3 or 4 different premises, but they were all interlinked. So I thought, why not just make those 3 premises the 3 acts of one 90-minute story? And, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's all 3-act business. But when you have a 90-minute story, it becomes a 6 acts, just because you kind of do it like a Next Generation episode. The cues of the commercials would be, but there's no commercials. Yeah, so this is funny. Kestra. Yes, damn it, Kestra. I've given away a lot of this already. Kiryoshi. Oh, Deborah shows up again. There was Lexley. Yeah, she's on the ship officially. Yeah, I think she's a scientist person, a science officer, something like that. Higher up than the other cadets. Yeah, she's the same age as Kiryoshi. She'd be wouldn't be a cadet. She'd be like a lieutenant commander or something. She'd be higher up. Yeah, Kiryoshi's Brian from DS9. Molly and Miral are not in it just because they're not in it. It's not like we wrote them out. We don't kill the characters off. Yeah, kind of wrote them out. But yeah, they kind of did their story arc though. They've like the Carnos kind of did their arc. We didn't want them to do their arc, but because at the end of Lower Decks, kind of had to, just to make it kind of timely. We also wrote out. We did write out the 2 of the Forge girls because that didn't really look right. Yeah, it looked like they were in blackface. They weren't supposed to be. They were supposed to. They didn't make those characters, so we made them look like those characters. It didn't work. So in the episode where they said, "Oh, the shapeshifters took over," and they were them, they were the shapeshifters. Full time. They weren't them. So shapeshifters. Although strangely enough, Tendi is in here as the Doctor, and she's got like that kind of gelatinous looking face because her skin is melting, so she looks like a Breen, which ties into Discovery. And they think she is a Breen when Discovery people show up. They're like, "Oh, she's a Breen," out of her mask. Yeah. Like, no, I'm not a Breen. I'm a Ryan, but my face is melting. So that's a joke. Kind of gross, but yeah. Yeah, so she's not a Breen. Maybe she is a Breen. Maybe the whole time she was a Breen. The other Tendi's a Breen. Yeah. Kind of makes sense, though, that was kind of a cool thing to do with Discovery. The Breen, sort of shapeshifters, kind of. That's why they would like the Dominion, because they're shapeshifters. Yeah, okay. Anyway, so, yeah, so, Lexi, Starship Locations Legacy, Season 2. Partly because the last episode with the thumbnail of Super Future Kestra as a Borg got a bunch of people to watch it. Almost 500 views. So we have to do another one. We have to do another season. So my goodness. 500 views in just a month. Wow. Okay, yeah, all right. Well, do more of those. We'll do more stories like that. They like Kestra. Who doesn't like Kestra? Lulu Wilson would probably be a little puzzled, but amused. Hopefully amused. Hopefully not cringe. But yeah. The actress who played Kestra Picard, of course, who is now 19. I don't know her. That's who the actress was. She was in a bunch of other earlier stuff. Yeah. TV actress. Anyway, so... But yeah, same age as the Abbeys and the other. The Abbeys are slightly older, yeah, 20s. Although the younger Abby did meet the other Abby. There's a younger Abby. They met. They knew each other. But that's not the one that's referred to in the Silly Shrek stories. The younger one's not in it. No, it's Woods and Hertzman. That's the characters' names. Yeah, they are the Abbeys. That's older. They're over 18. They're 19, 20, 21. I think 20 and 21 at this point. Anyway, so yeah, so anyways, so that's it. So I guess making of. We started on the teaser trailer, and then and it's about 90 degrees outside. So up here it's about 80. And yeah, there is a work crew right outside the window working on the ivy. They're tearing up the ivy. So yeah, there can't be any filming while that's going on. Beeping trucks and raiding loaders and all that stuff down here on the street. So here we are making of 5:30 or 6 or something. I need to do a little filming. We finished the teaser here. In the script, they're still on the bridge for like 3 more pages, but there's a lot of exposition, though I thought that I should move that to the larger briefing room set because it's easier to do that over there. It's really hot in here. I'm not going to do any more tonight, I don't think. It's just really, really hot in here, even with the air on. Yeah, it's the hottest time of the month. Yeah, so I'm gonna move that scene over there because it makes more sense. The allegedly Miriam Kim is doing the episode, but obviously not. There isn't a Miriam Kim, but yeah. So that's just Mariner and meets up with a little bit of nod to Discovery apparently with the progenitors and stuff. The black hole thing is a wormhole to them, and it sent it back time. She went with it. So, so yeah, on the thing in her old costume. So yeah, because they made an action figure of her and Saru. None of the other ones though. Yeah. So anyway, so yeah, that's kind of it. It's really really hot. It feels like it's 100 degrees in here. Yeah, probably not conducive of filming. Yeah. Yeah. So we have production here about there was 3 days of hiatus because there were workers digging up the park and putting in the area thing out there in the park, little area. I guess they're gonna put in some kind of a thing, and it's right outside the window. Equipment, exercise equipment. They're rebuilding the fitness stuff out there. Also, the neighbors were painting a house for on the other side, so it was noisy. Yeah, this is 28th now, and did some footage here. I did about 10 pages more past the teaser. Yeah, so we weren't on any kind of schedule. I don't know why we're worried about being on a schedule. There's an early schedule. If this is finished by July 1st, cool. And then July 4th it could come out, I guess, but it doesn't have to. It's still, it could be the 6th or 7th. But yeah, it doesn't have to. I understand that Prodigy starts on July 1st, but it's the, it's a TV show on Netflix, the sequel. So we can cover that and go back to this. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Here we have, the fan film, and it's all right. It's been working. It's a ship of Valkyries, but yeah, that's to own the right wingers. No, not really. It's entirely yeah. So it's fine so far. Nothing untoward there. Yeah, and of course in the story they mentioned one of the millennial characters, Kestra, brings up the Five Nights at Freddy's thing because it's comparable to the giant animatronic teddy bear in the story, and and actually the other one points out that it's not the Tej, and the other one point out Tam that no the Five Nights at Freddy's is a parody of Chuck E. Cheese and Showbiz Pizza. It's also Showbiz Pizza. Showbiz Pizza merged with Chuck E. Cheese. It is. It's a parody of Chuck E. Cheese. That's what it is. It's a smart ass. So basically, yeah. So yeah. So it's like a spoof of something that existed before. It kind of still does. There's Chuck E. Cheese's around. They're just kind of dead and completely revamped. But they used to have these animatronic puppet things, like Muppet kind of things, and they're kind of like Country Bears, but pizza. Yeah, they had a giant rat, the mascot. There was like a Grimace ripoff character, the purple guy, a dog, which they borrowed from another pizza place. They and another one, a wolf, and something else. So they had the animatronic thing because the Muppet Show was really big, and they wanted to do like animatronic Muppets for Chuck E. Cheese, and of course, naturally, anybody in our generation thought it would be funny is if the animatronics came to life and killed people. Of course, we thought that because we were kids. Of course, they would do that. But yeah, so yeah, a natural progression of Five Nights at Freddy's came much later in the 2014 or so. That game on the internet. But yeah, of course, that does it. I think the question is, Kal Kat any good at playing the game? Yes, extremely good at. Yes, I was good at playing the game. That it was if they're gonna follow the Chuck E. Cheese lore, yeah, sure, should be good at it. But yeah, not so much part two though. I think part two was a little harder. That was a little harder because it was non sequitur. It was kind of like what what are they doing? I don't think it's that. Yeah, it didn't follow any logic. So, but yeah, there've been like rip-off movies of the rip-off of that since then. That kind of thing. So, including one with Nicolas Cage. Before they came out with a Five Nights at Freddy's movie. And the joke is the animatronics come to life in the Chuck E. Cheese. That's the premise. Except in that version, it's like a birdie character that comes to life, like McDonald's Birdie. Because they don't really have those action. They don't really have Grimace and Birdie and Hamburger anymore. That kind of stuff. Which they had in the 80s. They were usually men in suits, and Ronald was a guy in a suit as well. Ronald McDonald was a clown in a suit. Yeah. So. Yeah, anyway, so they did a lot of that. And Disney still does that. So anyway, so this is just, yeah, we're about to ready. I think we've done enough for today, really, I think, because it's not on the schedule. And I want to push it so much. And got this far. 15 pages into a 90-page script. Yeah. So. Well, that was kind of a slog, but we did get something done here. Wow. 15 pages more. We're on page 30, and yeah, 15 more pages today. Tomorrow is the Star Trek Prodigy marathon. We'll do that, and then go back to this. So, yeah, I'm sure we're not going to watch all of the series in one day. We're going to watch half of it, and then watch the other half of it the next day. Hopefully Netflix will not pull it before we get to the end of half of it, but 6 hours of programming for 22 minutes each is kind of insane. So, yeah, we'll do that first. It is really hot up here, so, yeah. Yeah, that's what I was saying. It's funny that Emoji and Woods here, who are based on, and the other Abby, the other one, Hertzman, have more chemistry and going emotion than Tam and Kestra, who they're loosely based on. Weird. Their Cillian counterparts show up, and they're like, naturally they're better at the scene than they are. But it's still them. It's still we're not. There's no one extra here. It's not that. No, pitch in the voices later. No, one extra here. The scene with the trying to get the attention thing. That's a little bit of the something from one of the mom stories. So, but yeah, done up for laughs. Yeah, so anyway, so yeah, there's a little bit of that. But mainly, it's sort of a spoof of the camp that happened. And there's dialogue from the camp that happened that people said. Well, we're not saying who. They mixed it up, changed it a little bit, made them look foolish, which is funny. But they didn't name names, so it's funny. Well, if you're gonna be inspired by something, be inspired by that. Anyway, so this is Kal Kat, the Kal Katster, and yeah, I realize it's been like 8 days. It's the 8th of July. It's been 8 days since the marathon and the other stuff. Basically, it was last week. The entire cast caught a hideous summer cold that decimated any chance of doing any kind of filming. It looks like now it is abated enough to do some filming. I'm not sure about tonight because it's still kind of there, but yeah. Also, there's the other camp that's going on currently. But yeah, there was couldn't be helped. The cast hold. I'm going to attempt to do the next scene since it's just basically the captain on the view screen talking to the Roger character. No relation to the other Johnson. It's a different guy. Roger Math. This is the guy from Pine Hill. Appears in the story. One of the first Cillian board. And of course, Dawn also appears later on. This was managed to get the first half of the 3 parts. Make the story done last week. Just to get it to page 30. So separated into 6 parts, 3 halves, 3-act play over 90 minutes. Spread out in a different way than Next Generation does. Next Generation usually had done it back in the day with the 6 parts, 5 or 6 parts for commercial break for 42 minutes. The rest was all commercials. We don't have commercial breaks, so. So let's try something. Let's let's start it. Back production again on Starship Legacy. Starship Legacy Season 2. It is kind of a pilot, but it kind of isn't. New ship, some of the new crew, all that. It's inspired by a previous camp, and then this one. This wouldn't inspire more of it, but anyway. So yeah, and let's try it. I realized that this is incredibly short, but I just wanted to see if we could do this scene, and that's going to be it for the evening. For today. Tomorrow is going to be better, but that's it for today. I think. Why strain it? Yeah, because it's all audio, voice work, and yeah, as you can tell, it's very constrained. It doesn't matter if Worf is strained because his voice sounds like that anyway. But yeah, the other characters, yeah. So we just wanted to do those 2 pages, so page 32, and then stop there. Tomorrow we should easily be able to get to the middle of the story from there. Yeah. That would be page 45 would be the middle of it. So it's not that far off. Yeah, anyway, so yeah. Okay, halfway point. I completed another 8-9 pages today, and I got to the end of page 45, and there's 90 pages. So yeah, page 45. We met up with Roger again, did that, and yeah, production has been resumed. There was a cast meeting, meeting as well, but nothing concrete on whether there were future episodes after this pilot. There was just a meeting, so nothing yet. Anyway, so yeah, nothing yet. Yeah. Um, so yeah. Anyway, this story, continuing the story, and I think yeah, for the evening so far, I guess we'll just yeah, slow going to start over again, or well, not start over again, but continue, and yeah, so that's kind of what's going on. Oh, and yeah, you might want to change the director credits because MC Kim is not directing this episode because that makes no sense. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, anyway, yeah. This is the 9th. I think it's the 9th. Yeah. So, I knocked out almost 15 pages. Well, 13 pages roughly. Today on this is Thursday, John night. I don't know if we need to record Mark's cards necessarily coming up, but we probably won't do that. But yeah, we're on the set. Silly Kelly is doing this, not MC Kim. That's silly. Why would it be MC Kim? It doesn't make sense. Just did some of the teaser. That's it. And yeah, so this is what we got so far, and we are in the home stretch, and will definitely be able to finish filming this tomorrow. Yeah, so we're gonna stop for the evening, and charge battery and whatever, and be done for the evening on the set of this well, sort of a pseudo pilot. It probably isn't going to be. It's probably going to be like those other legacy episodes last season. There's another movie, and then there's another movie. It's probably what's going to happen. No, yeah, well, yeah, that's probably what's going to happen. Because doing 6 episodes is easier than doing 8. Basically, that's what's going on. Yeah, so this is treated as a 2-part episode, 45 minutes roughly each. Then the next one, yeah, it's easier to do that. Yeah, and we'll see about any Transformer ones after that. Don't even have a script. We don't really have a script for part 2 either. So just note that. This is, yeah, doesn't take that long to write a script, but it needs to be something good, you know. So yeah, this is what this is. Yeah, so this is the planet Illiop. We're finally doing the that, which of course do the effects of that, what that would look like in space, and not be too silly, but it obviously is silly. So happy medium between. Weird spaceship thing, furred spaceship thing, and other spaceship thing. And our nice new ship model. I'm not sure if you need to redo the credits, but I did redo some elements of the credits just because, okay, we don't need to pay homage to certain other people. I just pay homage to the dog that Floyd passed away. Floyd the dog. He was ancient, 17. Anyway, so yeah, so that's mentioned, but the other stuff, I didn't need that. It's not relevant to the story, just the dog. Anyway, so yeah, that's what you want to, you know, dog. So yeah, there doesn't need to be anything more on that. I don't think we need to go on extensively about what's going on here. The story writes itself. It's about, you know, this planet with this weird alien thing there. Early Borg kind of idea. Yeah, and more like the Kaler from Destiny. But we thought of it before they did. And their version of Destiny was kind of silly, because it was like, oh, the Aventine and Dax and all that, and then let's do that. And they defeat the Borg, of course, because they defeat them completely. It's like, no, come on, Storybooks. No, you didn't defeat the Borg. Yeah, they Picard season 3 even forgets the Borg Queen. This version, the Cillian version of the Borg. Roger and Dawn, basically. Roger Math and Don Schnell. It's not the real names, it's the names in this version. Left behind Cillian adults who were Cillian adults when they were put in the story. Lucky Clark's generation. thrown into the story to do stuff. Yeah, and their evil plan because they couldn't defeat us and our Cillian powers. Yeah, so it kind of works. It works. I think it works as a story. When you put it together, it'll work. It is the Silly Trek adventure. It is that, and of course we have Charlie X as a Khan action figure, and Roger there is a new Riker figure and a new Data figure is his son, offspring, the alien. As we referenced, The Children Shall Lead, and this episode, and a number of other ones. I don't know if that's the theme for this season, as they keep going to these energy creature planets with Q-like aliens. I don't know. Anyway, so we'll see what's going on with that. Yeah, this is the ballsy ending. Do we want the ballsy ending? Is that what's going to happen? Well, we'll see. I'm assuming we're not going to make any changes to the ending. So. Principal photography has just wrapped on the Star Trek Legacy movie, which was started a little over 2 weeks ago, and there was a cold in between there and kind of messed up all the production, and now it is finally finished. Well, actually, this principal photography is done. The space effects next to it, the ship, the final boss fight, which is mainly the last 10 minutes is a space battle. I don't know how we're going to do that, but yes, the Ruxpin ship and the Legacy and the airship, spaceship fight each other, and the Borg. There's a Borg ship there too, and they fight. And yeah, so we have a lot of goofy things. Things going on. Very much like the lower decks Borg ship scene from the trailer, kind of, sort of. Yeah, so we have and the crew apparently losing Tamara a little early because of a typo in Star Trek Discovery. The joke there being that the Calypso episode was added wrong. They wanted to make it 1,000 years in the future, and they were off by like hundreds of years. And and also the idea being that Tamara Tal can't be the 7th host. Adira Tal can't be the 7th host. She'd be like the 15th host, because they don't live that long. They wouldn't live 700 years. Because they showed the earlier people, they screwed that up. So she's got to be hanging around for 500 years with a traveler, and the traveler ends up being the other guy. So yeah. So yeah, anyway, that's it for tonight. Yeah, no, that's for the wraps right now, and it's over. So put together and the effects. Okay, this is, making of. This is actually a Cheshire Cat from the Disneyland senior trip. That's actually the Cheshire Cat from 1989. Just, that's from 89. And Teddy Ruxpin is from 86. but this is actually a flea market Teddy Ruxpin. The flea market Teddy Ruxpin, which was purchased in 2006, roughly. From 86, yeah, and it's an original, and it has a dislocated eye, and it was the star of I believe the 2019 Fanime story was in that one. Silly Kelly decided he's going to take a Teddy Ruxpin in a stroller thing as a Wookiee and go around the convention acting insane to try to go viral. It kind of worked, kind of didn't. Anyway, there's Teddy Ruxpin and the Cheshire Cat. It's like Disney and Hasbro would go and sue somebody. No, probably not. They're stuffies from the 80s. So yeah, that's what's going on there. Well, in this one, decided to include the making of the actual sci-fi, all the space footage right now. So everything's in the can. Everything is done. The movie is finished. It had a lot of troubled production history. It started. The story was written a month and a half ago during their camp, and so there's elements of that in there, sort of. And the original people that Kester and Tam were based on, one of them was in it, so she was like, "Why don't I just be in the story? That would make more sense." And So it's kind of the reverse of it's not really a reverse of, but it kind of is. You know how in TV sitcoms and shows like, say, the Dukes of Hazzard, when they replaced Bo and Luke with Coy and Vance, and switched them. Well, it's kind of like that with this, in that, but in reverse. In that the original people they were based on were okay with them using them in the story, well, under a pseudonym, of course. And so they're like, why don't we just have Hertzman and Emogi and them show up, because that's what they were based on. It would be like if Kal Kat and Cal Hazel showed up. Same idea. More so than the Darren thing from Bewitched, where Darren gets replaced. More so than Bo and Luke and Coy and Vance, because you're basically saying Bo and Luke weren't there to begin with, and then they suddenly were. It's kind of the reverse. It's kind of like a multiverse or something. Ooh, let's be confusing. Yeah. And also that during the on the 4th of July weekend, the whole cast caught the cold. It's going around, so production was delayed for 2 weeks, and just completed a little over a week. Completed. That was the troubled past of the story. And there was another camp, so of which one of them was there, and so we didn't really discuss the story though, or any future ones though. Although apparently they're okay with it. Yeah, just as long as they're not literally in it, because they weren't literally in it. They're not literally in the story. Also, originally it was allegedly directed by MC Kim, which makes no sense, or Jane Piedmont, which would make no sense either. Those characters are made up, so it doesn't make sense. So it wasn't that silly killing. So yeah, there's Mark's cards, and just a couple of days ago discussed it. We thought of Mr. Carey in Star Crackers. What will we be thinking of? Is it Jim Carrey or some other Carey? Well, there's another Carey around here, so it's not the same guy at all. And it's not Jim Carrey either. Well, we probably were thinking of that because it was late in the 80s. Star Crackers was written in 92. So it's probably what we were thinking. We just spelled it differently. I'm pretty sure we were thinking of that, and then thinking, strangely enough, because we thought everybody was reading our minds, taking Star Trek and all that out of our heads, that we thought, the copyright people are going to find out. Somehow they're going to go in there and our show is ruined because this guy's named Jim Carrey, after Jim Carrey, from Star Trek, from Living Color. But no, that wasn't going to happen because they didn't care. The Living Color was not something we wrote at all. We had a tendency to do that back then. It wasn't that they were ripping it off or vice versa. And Friends was kind of like that. And Seinfeld was kind of like that. A show about nothing. On location stories, and Starship locations, therefore, ergo, were similar in tone to that. They came up with a similar thing. Ours was not famous. Theirs was. So, yeah, they wouldn't have known at all. This story hints at something like that. In that we get to meet the original Borg, and they imply that Maurice Hurley was given the idea by these teachers from Pine Hill, who liked silly Trek enough to make it their own. Basically, go over there to Paramount and say, it's ours. It's not these kids that thought of it. We thought of it. Here's an idea for the Borg. And they became the Borg, but that didn't actually happen like that. It's just that they were on the same wavelength, but we were kids, high schoolers. We thought everybody revolves around us, right? The whole world, the whole universe revolves around us. It has to be about us, because they have to know about us in this obscure school in the middle of nowhere, San Jose. That has to be what's going on, right? But no, that really wasn't what was going on at all. Yeah, it's kind of funny. And during the making of the thing, we were... There was also Prodigy season 2 came out. We knew about that. We knew they were going to save it, going to go to Netflix. We knew about that. We knew Netflix would pick it up. And now they have. And yeah, my review is not as plussed as the other ones. I had a cold when I did it, but the other people said so much more about it that we don't really need to update it and say like, okay, we can go over the same stuff that happened. Isn't it cool that Will Wheaton shows up and plays the Wessian? Yes, it is cool. Yes, he was gonna do that. But yeah, so kind of the similar character that he was playing in Legacy Series 1, the Wessian, the same idea, which is interesting in the games. The games that are out of timeline and everything kind of thing. There's an inside joke. Discovery's in it. Saru and Michael Burnham are in it. We have a Khan figure in it in this one, but it's not Khan. It's a remake guy. I also have a reissue guy of Khan. It's not. It's Charlie X in the story. We also have Roger Johnson playing no relation to the other Johnson, playing the teacher guy. It looks kind of more like him than Riker. It's a Riker Jonathan Frakes figure, a current one. And the Data is playing his offspring, his son. We also have the Gorgon from the classic Trek that appears as a Picard figure to take Charlie away again. We also finally do. Mark Schwartz has been wanting to do for 38 years a remake of the Silly Trek Adventures with an actual Teddy Ruxpin toy. The original was we didn't have a Teddy Ruxpin in the 80s, and so we didn't have that, and so we used a giant dog instead. It didn't work. It was supposed to be a damn Teddy Ruxpin. That's what it was supposed to be. We didn't have Teddy Ruxpin until like 20 years later, 2006, and then put it in the special, Silly Kelly special anime. Trying to impress people. It was 2019, I think it's when it was. 2018 or 20. It was probably. I think it was 2019 because then we released the Blair Witch update, parody update. We're not doing any more of those. We're done doing those. But yeah, the idea of having an Enterprise Starship fight an Illiop ship like Teddy Ruxpin is hilarious and silly, and that's the whole point. That the whimsy of the Roger Math character isn't that he doesn't like whimsy, it's that he wants his own and he wants to take all the credit for it because he's a space genius. So he's basically like, I'm going to go to Paramount and tell them about these kids and how creative they are. We'll just steal their ideas because they'll never notice. That was the joke. And Schnell is a little more sympathetic, the Borg Queen, and she shows up and says, oh, I was the Borg Queen before the Borg Queen. She goes, oh, I was the Borg Queen in the 80s. They didn't introduce a Borg Queen until 1996. I was the queen in the 80s. Like, wow, before the Next Generation started, actually. The Borg was the thing I knew before it even started. It goes back to 87. We were clearly thinking Terminator and zombies, because of course we were, and so were they. Yeah, isn't that very shortly? Yeah. We weren't saying literally they stole the idea. We were joking about that. They didn't really. It's not even similar. The only thing similar is that Coy and Vance Bone Luke thing. Okay, there's a similar set of characters with a similar virus that gets them and makes them act silly and crazy and avant-garde and whatever, and turns them and makes them angry. There's a similar thing going on. There's the spores of the fungal virus or whatever. And that kind of doesn't work in the story, but it's Silly Trek, so why not? It's sort of like Mark's Cards and discussing the Inside Out 2. She hasn't seen yet. He's seen the first one, but hasn't seen it. And it's like if Riley is literally a young teenager in the story, one of her emotions will be horny, and it will override every other emotion. So basically, the fungal virus or space virus, or they need Nintendosis or whatever, that thing, the Teen Spirit virus is horny, basically. Horny. That's what's going on. Yeah, and that's not exactly what happened at the two camps at all. I mean, that's not what happened. It's sort of an exaggeration of a much more mundane and boring story involving the characters trying to make each other jealous, basically. didn't work because they weren't an item. So they were baffled at the whole thing in the original story and in the sequel. And they're like, what? What's going on? I don't get it. But yeah, it's, as they would do, because of the emotion or writing thing. And I think that was the point of the Roger Math character, is that he didn't like that because he couldn't participate in it. So he decided to sabotage it, ruin it. Like, oh, the kids, I'll get them, I'll take their ideas and go to Star Trek. I'll ruin it. I'll take the credit for everything. Turns out that the Roger character in the story, and being an anti-hero, he doesn't really have a plan. He just wants his offspring back. That's his plan. And once the others decide to use the artifacts, they have a plan to get the artifacts back. Also, Calypso, referencing Discovery, the Calypso episode, they actually screwed up. They didn't add correctly. It is a typo. At the end of Discovery Season 5, they put the Discovery out there to be discovered 1,000 years later from when they left, because they screwed up. They messed up. They screwed it up. 1,000 years from 2257 would merely be 3257. It would be a little bit after, so it would be after the other stuff, but not 1,000 years later. I mean, like 50, 60 years later. So they had to fix that in the finale by having Burnham be an admiral and put the ship out there. But they didn't really need to. They could have left that out just because the showrunner wanted to. They could have just not explained it. It didn't need to be explained. Ergo, having this story with a Teddy Ruxpin in it doesn't need to be explained. It's just a spaceship that looks like it. The Funland thing. And then the younger people might say, oh, you're ripping off Five Nights at Freddy's. That's actually referenced? No. Five Nights at Freddy's is a spoof of Showbiz Pizza / Chuck E. Cheese. That's what it is. They are taking off on Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese. The animatronics at Showbiz Pizza and Chuck E. Cheese from the 80s. That's the joke. So if they don't get that, that's what's going on. That's why I was so good at playing Five Nights at Freddy's, because I was there. You guys weren't there. I was there. Okay. I didn't see the Five Nights at Freddy's movies, they did two fake ones too before they did the real one, including one with Nicolas Cage of all people. Yeah, I guess the real one didn't make any money either, because it's like, the novelty is the rat and the other characters are alive and they're evil and they're killing people. That's the joke. It's something we thought of when we were 11 or 12 at Chuck E. Cheese. Wouldn't it be funny if the animatronics were evil and they had like teeth rigged up to them to eat people? Yeah, we were a little twisted. That's the joke. That's literally the joke. It's Chuck E. Cheese. So in this version, they reference the younger people in the story reference Five Nights at Freddy's, to which they reference. Then the other older ones go, no, I'm thinking of Chuck E. Cheese and the Funland. The Funland idea is that in the 2250s, Funland was based on the Misfit Toys planet, and that this other stuff was going on, and that Funland was sort of an evil version of Disneyland, conjured by the boys. Wanted their own version of Disneyland with animatronics that could kill. That was the gag. That's literally what it was. And because their ambitions were so powerful from the space virus that got to them, from Boy George, Michael Jackson. Boy George, George Michael, and Michael Jackson are three different people from classic 80s era. And they got melded together into an alien creature that was kind of homophobic. He's running around and he's doing things. That actually is vaguely clever for somebody about 17 to think that those three names should go together. Yeah, that's kind of clever. But not what he was doing. That wasn't clever. That was just homophobic. So he had... he made the Zeldanian Nintendoses, basically. Made them hornier than they would be, and more ambitious than they would be. Boys having Q powers, well, naturally they had the Q powers. And they said, I want to do this. Ba-ding, and Q shows up and everything's Q. So the idea was based on a Next Generation episode, which at that point Mark Cars hadn't seen. because he didn't see the first season at all in its first run. He saw it in reruns. Later on, in black and white on the TV, so he saw it later on, like a year later, and didn't know who any of the characters were at all. They had no idea. So when I would mention LaForge and Data and Picard, he would think they were in the same universe with Kirk and Sulu and everybody. So he had no idea. And Q, he didn't know who Q was either. Was he like Trelane or whatever? So in the Silly Trek version, well, he knows somehow. He's told, and goes down. So basically, what happens is there's an episode of Next Generation where Q tests Riker by giving him Q powers. I thought, well, that's the catalyst for all the Silly Trek as well, because Q goes to us and gives us Q powers, and naturally we take them because we want them. Because why wouldn't we? Even an unlimited god, like demigod powers, of course we're going to use them and do crazy stuff. And, conjuring Teddy Ruxpins and whatever. But yes. So yeah. So that's they conjure the powers, Q powers. The Silly Trek Adventures, 1986, 87 was aired at Pine Hill. Was a cartoon, animated cartoon done with animated little. It was like really crude animation, done with crude, with color forms figures pretty much. They were drawn up to look like Star Trek people. Picard and Kirk are in there. They fight a Teddy Ruxpin. It was the 80s. And what's weird is the internet has since stricken the 2 or 3 Illiop stories from the internet. But they were there. There was a Next Generation era story somebody posted based on the Silly Trek. It wasn't me. Somebody, a fan apparently, posted this thing saying that in Next Generation, one of the lost episodes was the Enterprise D crew fighting a giant Teddy Ruxpin, which floated up to them and attacked them. And that was the Silly Trek story. Wasn't me. Well, probably somebody else from Pine Hill put that up there. Be my guess. Because where else would that have come from? That's gone. And there was another one where it was a Kirk era one, which is also gone. So they were good. And then once the Cillian Realms books were released on Amazon, those other ones kind of disappeared and were supplanted by the Amazon ones. The Scribe ones, because they were more like, oh, okay, that's the original that it's based on. Also, Seth MacFarlane did a version of that called Ted, and Ted 2. And the kids were talking about TED Talks, which thinking it was Ted the bear, not TED Talks as in on the internet. They were thinking Ted, like TED Talks, the bear. But Ted was again Teddy Ruxpin. Seth MacFarlane even said so during those movies. He said that commentaries. It's supposed to be a Teddy Ruxpin. We just didn't get permission from Worlds of Wonder and back at Hasbro. We couldn't really use a Teddy Ruxpin. But yeah, it's supposed to be Teddy Ruxpin. Yeah. And of course, Silly Kelly reviewed that movie series, going like, "Why is it not a Teddy Ruxpin?" Oh, also the point of the Ted 2, he has the Teddy Ruxpin in the shot. It may have been later than 2006, whenever Ted 2 came out. It doesn't matter. Anyway, so it is from the 80s. Yeah, the 2 MacFarlane movies were not Teddy Ruxpin. So you have. So we decided to do it and film. And it makes sense in the story because Charlie X is a 150-year-old man-child who has accumulated Misfit Toys Planet stuff with his Q powers. He has Q-like powers. He conjured this stuff into existence and brought it out of space-time. He blows up the anomaly, causes the system to blow up into the black holes that are later encountered by the Discovery crew hundreds of years later. Yes, and Tamara disappears in the story, shockingly into the other universe. Although if you think that, although she does say that she's got to disappear for 500 years so she can reappear as Grey Tall, because there again they did a accident and typo and didn't add up the dates right, and 700. Yeah, if her symbiote, that's only her 7th symbiote, Grey is 6th, and Adira is the 7th. There should be like more like 12th or 13th, but they didn't add it right, so they said 7th, which means that the earlier version of her where they showed her is from the 2407 period, as great as Javartal, that doesn't match up, and he would be, yeah. At one point, did he live another 400 years so that he could show up later in 700 years? No, they just added it wrong. It should have been. So, yeah, once they get to host number 5, they got to jump 500 years to get to, yeah. They just do. They just do. Yeah, so they didn't add that. And there's fans that are like, oh, I really don't like Star Trek Discovery anyway. Why reference Star Trek Discovery at all in the story? No, you kind of have to, because the spoof of Enterprise, Star Trek Columbia, takes place during the time of Discovery's first 2 seasons. So yeah, they would have to reference that, and the Teddy Ruxpin stuff, as having taken place actually earlier in that timeline. So it isn't that this is the one that the Enterprise A fought and the Enterprise D fought in the combined story, in the Cillian story, the one that Q made into existence. No, this is an earlier one that was on the planet. It's an earlier one. Yeah, it's probably the one they based the other one on. Yeah, so that's funny. It's an earlier one. But yeah, so they're in the 2407, and they flash back to, in the story, they stay in 2407, and it's Legacy, and it's season 2 pilot. Yeah. The cast meeting thing sort of fizzled out, though, so I don't know whether there's any more of them, but this is a nice pilot, so let's just go with that. Yeah, so we'll see what happens. Thinking that these movie versions are easier to make, because you technically have 2 45, 50-minute episodes in one, and you make a 90-minute movie. And then you go and make another 90-minute movie, and then another one. It's just easier to make 6 hours of film instead of 8. Just 6 hours, done. Unlike some of those Disney Star Wars things where they're clearly too long, and they should have made a 4-part miniseries out of this. Nothing there. They're complaining about The Acolyte all over the TV. I've not seen it. I really have no interest in seeing it. So, Acolyte. Yeah, because Disney's not ripping off our stuff at all. So. But there's the Cheshire Cat. So, that is from 1989. That's from the senior trip with the Cantrells. So that is the original Cheshire Cat. It's funny that Roger's spaceship would be the most whimsical and bizarre thing ever flown, even though he says, I'm not whimsical. Like, he's flying in a giant inflated cat ship and shaped like a Cheshire Cat. I'd say that's very whimsical. He's a hypocrite in the story. Roger, I think Johnson, that's his real name. Roger Math. I don't think they necessarily were like that, now that it's like years later, 30-some years later. I don't think they were actually borrowing from Star Trek. It's just that we were so on the same wavelength, it was scary, to the point of like moments in time being used on Star Trek. They probably would have done a Teddy Ruxpin episode. Why not? Yeah. They referenced the Illiop thing in Lower Decks. There's a scene where they go to the Teddy planet. Of course they do. That's in Lower Decks. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, Mike McMahon probably did know people who went to Pine Hill. That would explain that show a lot. And Prodigy probably know people a lot. So there's some hints to our stuff. But not so much Discovery. Although they did have a Kal, and they did have a Sukal, so they did have a Kal. And the fans were complaining that the other guy, that was his friend, comes in and he's on a wheelchair. He's like, why is that? Why is there a guy in a modern wheelchair on the show? The fan wanted to be on the show, so what? Why are you complaining about that? yeah. I mean, Geordie LaForge was based on a fan. I would also like that. Yeah, they made him blind in the show, but he wasn't actually blind in real life. He had something else going on. Yeah, so they've been paying homage to that stuff for years. But yeah, there were moments in time. There was when Mark Card started watching Star Trek: The Next Generation. He thought of an episode of the Silly Trek story when he was a freshman and I was a senior, because I was at junior high and high school, and so they were in junior high when I was in high school, and he's a freshman, and he thought of this scene where Picard and someone else gets out an apple, pulls out his bag and chucks it in the air, eats it. A little bit of a homage to Star Trek 2, because Kirk did kind of something similar. But apparently everybody else caught on that, and Next Generation showed it the next week on TV, and had a character do the same bit, like literally the same bit. The only way they could have possibly known. They were so on the same wavelength, or one of those teacher guys was like, "Hey, this kid just did something hilarious with an apple. Hey, Paramount, I want you to imitate that for a show." And it's so pervasive in the culture of Star Trek that they included it in Star Trek 2009. Kirk plays the Kobayashi Maru test, reaches into his backpack, pulls out an apple, and goes, "Oh, I don't like to lose." So even J.J. Abrams was like, "Yeah, we know these guys. We don't, but for some reason we do." Isn't that weird? So why not do a Teddy Ruxpin episode? Why don't we do the Illiop story? An update of the Illiop story. Well, now it is here. And it's a twist on Wrath of Khan, because Charlie X is a Khan figure in the story. And so it's sort of a remake of Gods and Men from other series. Kind of. Yeah, so... Yeah, and Tamara character wanted to be written off the show, but she didn't want to die. That's kind of what happened. The character who plays her wanted to be. I want off the show, but don't kill my character. Since I'm an immortal being or something, Trill, have it so I'm just lost in space for like hundreds of years. That works. Oh, okay. Yeah, it's not like the show is creepy or weird or anything. Don't need to be on it. It's not creepy. I just don't want to be on it. But yeah. So but unlike the Lieutenant Yara, they killed her off and all that. We don't want to kill her off. Now she's a traveler. The other one was supposed to be a traveler, though, because Kester was supposed to be a traveler, but only later. She showed up 10 years in the future and said, "I'm a traveler now." Ew, and then there's supposed to be a Sukal moment at the end of the story, but we decided that it should be Jake Sisko instead. At the last minute, Jake Sisko. It's funnier. Yeah, because if it was another Wesley thing again, an homage to the Wesley Traveler, it'd be too much like Prodigy, and they'd just say, "Oh, he's just ripping off Prodigy," and then saying they thought of it first. Well, we did think of it first, but yeah, okay, we'll change it. Yeah. So as for the other ones, they want to return. So yeah, we'll think of something else. After this, usually when you do a movie, if it's going to be a trilogy, the darker middle chapters, the darker one. But yeah, you don't need to necessarily have that, and that's our Genesis sort of thing. The sequel was called The Wrath of Libby, and it was a Wrath of Khan parody. And we got in trouble for that one because we were literally making fun of one of the students at school. Yeah, that probably wasn't the best plan. And using footage from Wrath of Khan as well. So. And they've been trying to remake that ever since. There have been 13 Star Trek movies, and half of them have been some variation of the Wrath of Khan. Stop. 2 of them were origin stories that didn't need to happen, and they want another one. The other 3 or 4 were some kind of metaphysical thing or / man versus God kind of thing story. Yeah, including Kirk and the God's space thing. But yeah, I've never done a full review of all the Star Trek movies. I think I summarized some of them. I don't see any reason to, because I was there. But yeah, we reviewed some of our most famous one is our review of Star Trek Into Darkness. Star Trek Into Darkness. There's at least a version of that out there on the internet. Star Trek Into Darkness, which is the one where they shouldn't have known who Khan was yet, because they were or had met him at all, because they screwed up the timeline even there. And the newer ones, really the next movie should be a Lower Decks movie. Just get the actors, live action, Lower Decks movie. That should be the next movie. Do that. Yeah, that'd be cool. Yeah, because they're playing younger people and they're actually older. They're in their 20s, playing teenagers. Yeah. And they almost screwed that up. Actually, they give them advice on that one. Yeah, on Lower Decks. I'm like, okay, if you're gonna have, Shannon Phil come back and Wesley and all that, you're gonna have to explain how Beckett Mariner was even there, because she wouldn't have been. She would have been too young. And they fixed it in the story. They said, okay, she's a first-year cadet and she's like a genius. So she's like Wesley, but she's like a little younger, which makes her character in her 30s when the show actually starts, but that's fine, I guess. She's the same age as the actress. Okay. That's fine. But yeah, it kind of screws up. Yeah. Why would they be lower deckers at that point in their 30s? They'd be lieutenants already. Or are they that incompetent? Anyway, maybe they'll fix it in season 5. We'll see. My claim to fame in season 5 is 2 things. The Starship San Jose shows up. I was in command, of course. Later on in season 4, I was all like, yeah, I want a scene where my character shows up and he gets stunned with a phaser. He does in the pilot. Gets stunned with a phaser. Yeah. Anyway, so you get to see the Sarah Esteban in the beginning of the story. Briefly, it drops the other crew off to go to the new Starship Legacy. Decided on a new ship model, which was built during the first camp. Very leggy looking ship, has long warp double. Instead of 4 warp nacelles stacked on top of each other, it has 4 warp nacelles going lengthwise. It's very long. That would mean that the Teddy Ruxpin, they say, is 500 meters long. In the story, the ship is well over 1,000 meters long in order for that to work with the nacelles. So the saucer section is about the same size as the Teddy Ruxpin. But the rest of it is it's just really, really long warp engines because it's got slipstream drive. It's really fast. And it's more similar to the Aventine than the other one, which is interesting. So, the Aventine. It sounds like a medication. The Aventine. Take your Aventine for occasional regularity or something. Yeah, so I rambled on here to add to the making of. And, well, you needed to know more. So the backstory is what it is. Here we are. So, yeah. It is Saturday the 12th, 13th. Set. Held back a week. Managed to get a principal photography wrapped on this and we'll put it together. All the space footage is filmed. Could change the credits to reflect the new ship and what it's doing in the space and change the credits to match that instead. You don't have to. It's not essential. It just looks better. You don't have to. But it's the Silly Trek Adventures. It's the first Silly Trek. It's a remake of it with the ship. I don't think they'll do that a lot. I don't think we'll do other ones. I won't do Wrath of Libyan again. We kind of already did that. We kind of already did that with that one with Sarah Esteban in it. We kind of already did that story. Yeah. Reverse Wrath of Khan in that one. She was actually the hero. In this one, we have a Khan character that shows up, but it's not Wrath of Khan because he's a Q kind of thing. He's a Charlie X. He's a Q. So it's not a Khan. He's just a, yeah, he's a space demigod. Fight him. Because, yeah, man versus a space god, that's a classic TNG, old classic Trek trope. A classic sci-fi trope. Going back to even Forbidden Planet, which was the id and their ego that had come to life and was taking over the planet. Sort of a computer was taking over the planet. The computer had gained sentience and it was using their id against them, their ego, their superego. They said the id, but they meant their ego and their superego in the story. They meant that. It was very Jungian. And Forbidden Planet, of course, inspired Star Trek. Yeah, among other things. And New BSG. Not the yeah, so yeah, he's taking over and stuff. Stop doing prequels. Hollywood, stop with the prequels. Stop with the remakes. Glory Days of the 80s. No. The only way you can do Glory Days of the 80s is you do a Star Trek story where they fight a giant 500-meter Teddy Ruxpin. That's how you do the Glory of the 80s. The only thing that would be more 80s is if Cyndi Lauper or Madonna walk in and they start singing. Just for no reason on the bridge. Da, 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 da. Girls just want to have fun. That'd be funny. But no, we don't have the rights to the music, so we couldn't do that. Would have done. And yes, we do include the female heroic characters, and we do it right. Yes, they actually solve the situation, the story. Yes. Yes. I understand that this Acolyte did not do that right, but we did. Yeah. The Acolyte didn't do it right. They didn't know what they were doing. They screwed it up. They failed. Understand? Yeah. Of course, it isn't that they failed because there was women's folks. No, that isn't what it is. It's that the story wasn't very well written. Yeah. Sort of like when they were on about Raya and the Last Dragon and that other movie. Avatar. Yeah. It's more like Avatar than Avatar the Last Airbender. It's more like that other one, the Cameron. Yeah. Comparing it to that, then that kind of works. But yeah. But we're not on about that because that makes no sense. But no, they were just, yeah. It doesn't matter. Not sure how well received a giant space Teddy Ruxpin attack planet thing works, but we wanted to do that for years, for almost 40 years. So, yeah. Figure why not? Yeah. The Borg with that one. There were also space viruses a lot in Star Trek and the classic Trek. They'd always have the space virus solved by the 45-minute mark. They go to a desolate planet where there's no cure at all, and they would somehow find a cure. Yeah. They did that. The crew is hopelessly trapped here until McCoy comes up with a cure. Or Next Generation, they did that a couple times too. The biofilters wouldn't filter that out. It's odd. Yeah, the transporter would essentially be a death cheat device. They would say, oh, the red shirt died. Oh, just beam him back up and reassemble him so he's alive. Yeah, that would work. Yeah, why wouldn't that work? Yeah. Discovery's entire last 3 seasons were a typo. Shouldn't have happened. But it wasn't Q. Or are they trapped inside the thing? Yeah, that distant future they were thinking about in this story, this kind of establishes. Actually, no. They're not supposed to be there. That was kind of the gag they thought they were going to do. Have Q show up at the end and go like, oh, by the way, this last 3 years didn't happen. It was just me messing with your heads. Yeah. The Mycelium network. There it is again. The Mycelium network. I know it's spelled differently, but it sounds like mycelium. How about Paramount just hire us and we'll do Star Trek? Fans want Star Trek Legacy? We'll do it. How about they do that? I mean, come on. Just give us money. We might even do the first one for a slight discount. Yeah. But yes, Disney Cat and Teddy Ruxpin. Yes, of course. Because also that other thing that we thought of was every kid in the 80s thought of, well, let's put a Metallica tape in a Teddy Ruxpin or a dirty Eddie Murphy tape and it'll swear. It won't, because it's not designed to play other tapes that are part of it. Although one of my friends figured out how to bypass that particular tape thing. So yeah, there's a little button in there, and you just tape it up with some gray tape, and it'll play a Metallica tape, but its mouth won't move properly. It'll just be like, yeah. And you can make it cuss. But yeah, its mouth won't move. Of course they have it. And because it's an animatronic, it's going to be alive and try to kill everybody. Of course. But in the story, it's just a spaceship that looks like one. So, yeah. Figured that's a little more realistic than actually literally being Teddy Ruxpin. It's such a crazy idea. Yep. Yeah. Anyway, so that's all I got, I guess. And I've been keeping it on topic. It was just kind of amazing. Ramble on about something else. No, it's all on topic. It's about Star Trek. Yeah, so there's any number of things we thought of. Keeping a guy in a transporter alive, Vorta Shidori, female Vorta, we thought of that. Borg, space virus making a crew horny, yeah, we thought of that. Of course we did, several times. It didn't help that Next Generation went there. It's episode 3, The Naked Now. Didn't help that the episode before that was Code of Honor, which was the most racist Star Trek episode ever. Unintentionally so. I don't know what they're thinking. But yes. Michael Dorn and LeVar Burton were embarrassed about that one. They're like, oh, God. You realize what you're doing. This episode is ridiculous. It's stupid. Anyway. Can't be any more silly than a silly Trek episode.